government officials had hoped that the public inspection of the U.S. gold depository at Fort Knox in 1974 would silence those who doubted that gold was even being stored there. But for some, the tour of the otherwise off-limits facility only fueled even more intense speculation and skepticism.
I was looking for a summer job, and I got a phone call at home one day, and there was a man on the other end of the phone, and he asked me, he said, "Are you interested in a job?" And I said, "Yes, I'm interested in a job. What kind of job is it?" And he said, "I can't tell you."
The call Doug Simmons received was from the Gold Bullion Depository at Fort Knox. The job was simple: lift and move the gold from one room to another, where it would be cleaned and counted.
I started there in 1975. They briefed us that we were not to discuss with anybody what we saw inside the building. Of course, we were 18 years old. So, by that afternoon, we'd already told all our girlfriends what we had seen,
But what Doug Simmons discovered was that Fort Knox was more than a depository for gold. Much more. During World War II, Fort Knox served as a secret depository for the U.S. government's most important and cherished documents, including the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. And as the Battle of Britain raged, the English government requested Fort Knox be the hiding place of the Magna Carta.
It's always been a storage place, so when you saw those boxes, you could only conjecture what was inside of there. Now, I was there when the Crown of St. Stephen was pulled out and was given back to the Hungarian government. There was the crown and his sword and his scepter, and these things are just priceless.
The presence of additional sealed boxes convinced Simmons that perhaps the real purpose of Fort Knox wasn't the secure storage of gold at all, but the secret storage of items of even greater historic and strategic value.
I don't think that anybody would ever try to break in that building to steal the gold, because one, it would take an incredible operation to get that out of there because of the sheer weight of it. If somebody wants into the bullion depository, it's not going to be for the gold.
But what else, besides gold, could be so valuable, so top secret, that it would require the most stringent security measures that the U.S. government could offer?
Fort Knox held some things that, of course, people would be a little frightened of now. Opium, for example, was stored there.
The U.S. Army and federal government has stored drugs and chemicals in the gold vault in case of the next war or time of war.
That was kind of a reality check when we saw that, because it kind of let you know that, did our government ever think we were going to be involved in a nuclear war? Absolutely we did. Because they were stockpiling pain-killing drugs.
According to a 1993 report, Fort Knox contains nearly 70,000 pounds of opium and morphine. It also houses 900,000 carats of diamonds, a treasure trove of precious stones that rivals that of England's crown jewels. But there are those who believe that Fort Knox also houses something even more valuable, more strategically important to our nation than any amount of gold or jewels. In 1948, Kentucky Air National Guard Captain Thomas Mantell was ordered to investigate a strange sighting over Fort Knox.
Two important things about Thomas Mantell. Number one, he was a decorated pilot of World War II and had many hours of flying time. He was leading a squadron down to Goodard, Kentucky, which is near Fort Knox. During the early morning hours, an unidentified object was seen over the airfield, and Thomas Mantell was requested by the air traffic controller to take a look at this object.
Now, he describes this craft as being a very large, orange, luminous ball, and he decides to approach it to figure out what this is.
There was some exchanges that took place between the captain and the air traffic control. We're not sure exactly what those communications were because the government, won't release them to us. What we do know is that a Kentucky farmer heard a noise and looked up and saw a P-51 fighter plane come crashing down. There's speculation as to what happened. Initially, it was that Captain Mantell was shot down by this unidentified flying object, that he was hit with a ray of some sort that knocked out his engine and he crashed.
A lot of UFO cases don't involve parameters that involve death. And unfortunately, the pilot, Thomas Mantell, in pursuing this craft, actually lost his life. And that's a pretty dramatic circumstance.
Some researchers speculate that the wreckage of Captain Mantell's aircraft is kept hidden at Fort Knox. But if so, why? Could the incident really have involved a UFO, as some suggest? A UFO searching the skies for gold?
What's really intriguing about this is it happened directly over Fort Knox. Is there some tie-in to the fact that we store large amounts of gold at Fort Knox? Was the UFO perhaps interested in some of this gold as a reservoir?
It doesn't corrode, it's an excellent conductor of electricity, and it's one of the natural forming elements in the universe. And here you have this huge deposit of gold, and so there were a number of sightings in and around Fort Knox.
Could Fort Knox really be the top secret hiding place for material evidence that extraterrestrials exist?
I don't know if they've got the Roswell aliens hidden up there, or Jimmy Hoffa's in there, or Amelia Earhart's hidden in there. I don't know who's in there. But boy, they're sure spending a lot of money to guard something.
It is considered the most impenetrable vault in the world. A fortress of granite and steel.
And armed with high-tech defense mechanisms.
But the questions concerning Fort Knox have never been about its level of security. The real questions concern the mystery of what, if anything, is actually being stored there.
Secret things are done with that gold reserve. That gold reserve is public property. It's the property of all the people in the United States. And the things that are done with it are meant to undertake secret policies without any accountability to Congress or the people of the United States. That's objectionable.
In 1980, newspaper reporter Bill Still received an envelope. The sender, a wealthy Ohio businessman named Edward Durrell. In it, Durrell detailed how he had spent tens of thousands of dollars researching Fort Knox and had come to one explosive conclusion. There was no gold being stored there at all.
The way the gold was removed, as I understand it, was by truck and rail. It was sent to the Federal Reserve Bank in New York and then shipped over to the London Gold Pool. It was sold into the market at $35 an ounce. Immediately thereafter, the price started shooting up, and by 1980, it topped out at over $900 an ounce. So you can imagine if you bought tons and tons and tons of gold out of Fort Knox via the London Gold Pool at $35 an ounce, that there was a considerable profit when you sold it at $800 or $900 an ounce. All it ended up doing was draining hundreds of millions of ounces of America's gold, and we'll never get it back.
Could America's entire gold supply really have been moved, one shipment at a time? Photographic evidence does reveal the existence of loading docks on the far side of the depository.
invisible from any public road. Nevertheless, there are those who remain skeptical.
For all our technology today, there's still only one way to get that gold out of the depository, and that is to load it on trucks again and take it back to the railhead. And to put an operation like that into effect, how would you hide that from media scrutiny? So if they've taken all that out, boy, they must have done it with a cloaking device, because there is no way that they could have done that without somebody noticing.
The Gold Antitrust Action Committee is an organization dedicated to investigating the exact nature and extent of gold being reported by the world's central banks and commodities exchanges. They strongly maintain that the amount of gold being reported to exist in the global marketplace has been deliberately and grossly exaggerated in an effort to keep the price artificially low. Based on materials gathered from public records and Freedom of Information lawsuits, GATA co-founder Chris Powell believes that even if there is gold in Fort Knox, it may no longer be property of the United States. Someone else may own it.
Governments need to control gold in order to sustain the value of their currencies and to sustain the value of their bonds. And to do this, now the U.S. government has resorted to rigging the gold market. We believe that the primary purpose of these gold swaps is surreptitious intervention in the gold market. For example, the United States may decide that in February it needs 50 tons of gold to be sold in the London market in order to keep the gold price under control, but does not want to be the central bank identified doing this. So the United States could call up the German central bank and say, listen, we'd like you to sell 50 tons of gold in London. Would you please do that, and we will give you in exchange title to 50 tons of gold vaulted at the depository in Fort Knox. You could go into Fort Knox tomorrow and be shown a lot of gold. That would not dispel every secret about Fort Knox unless you also knew to whom that gold belonged. Just seeing that gold in Fort Knox doesn't dispel the questions.
People will look me square in the eye and tell me that I've been duped and that none of that's real. I've been listening to pundits for the last 30 years tell me that what I saw wasn't real. Now, I don't know what they're holding now inside that building, but I know that if you cross onto their land, they'll kill you. They're protecting something, and there's a secret there somewhere.
Is the gold in Fort Knox ours? Or is the depository really empty? Is it only a myth intended to bluff foreign nations into thinking that the United States has been stockpiling vast gold reserves? Or is the maximum security installation really housing another, even more audacious secret? Perhaps one involving evidence of UFOs or something even more profound? One thing is certain. Fort Knox remains one of the most highly protected and closely guarded locations in the world. Few have ever been inside, and fewer still have ever lived to reveal its secrets.